stuff out of the next hour and a half. And as ever with these things, what you get out of it is directly proportionate to what you put in. So don't be backwards and coming forwards with questions and things like that when we get to those sessions, because the more interactive it can be, the better. I think everyone knows me, but if you don't, John Dowell, I'm the interim CFO at the Integrated Care Board. I'm chairing the session today, but also delighted that we've been able to be joined by Bill Shields, who is the incoming CFO. Bill will be joining in November. I think it's probably pretty early Bermudan time, Bill, isn't it? So so thanks for making the effort to be on here. We've got a slot on the agenda later, so I think you can do your introduction then, if that's okay. But great that we got Bill with us. Just a few sort of housekeeping arrangements for how the sessions will run. Just a reminder, it is being recorded. Charlie's recording the session. We haven't got a planned break, so feel free to duck out and do whatever you need to do during the time. I'll sort of see how we're going on. If there's a natural break, then we might take 5 minutes, but there's nothing planned. And just the usual Teams etiquette in terms of if you're not talking, try and remember to go on to mute to remove any background noise and that sort of thing. But remember to take yourself off mute when you want to come in with your questions. Raise a hand, all that sort of thing. Feel free to do that. And any questions, I'll try and keep an eye on the chat as well if you prefer to do that. So I think that's probably it in terms of pleasantries, so we can get underway. First thing we're going to do is just have a little spin around the organisations, just for a bit of an update from the CFO and or deputy for that organisation, just to check in on what's going on for them. We're going to hear, I think, from Colin, from Phil, from Dave, Stacey, and from Alex. As I mentioned, myself and Bill have got a slot on the agenda, so I'm going to keep my powder dry until then. So I will probably, without further ado, go to Colin first, if you're there, Colin.
I am, thanks, John. So my name's Colin Dart. I'm the one of the directors of operational finance at Royal Devon University Healthcare Trust. And just for those who may not know, so RDUH was a new organisation from 1st of April, which was the merging of Royal Devon and Exeter Foundation Trust and Northern Devon Healthcare Trust. So in relation to our current position, so we have a plan for an £18 million deficit this financial year, and we are currently achieving that plan, though there are some quite significant risks that are materialising within our environment here. So most of those risks are around CIP, inflation, and delivering ERF and the productivity elements that were within our plan. In relation to how things are feeling within the organisation, probably a common theme that would come through others is it's feeling very pressurised through operationally. Urgent care pressures continue, which is affecting our elective capacity. We've got increasing staff turnover and sickness levels, which is testing staffing resilience and morale within the organisation, and we're seeing an increase in reliance in agency expenditure to cover that. We've got increasing number of vacancies, so we're not being able to keep up with that. And we're also seeing the impact of inflationary pressures from utilities, etc., as others will be putting pressure on our plans. In addition to that, then we've gone live in July with a new electronic patient record, so we're also dealing with that in the mix with everything else, so bringing under pressure staff into a new electronic patient record. But that will give us benefits in safety and ways of working going forwards. So on the whole, delivering a financial plan in a really challenging environment, which is making it really difficult to engage with our operational colleagues who are just constantly feeling the pressure of urgent care pressures as it stands at the moment. So that's just a 5-minute whistle stop from RDUH.
Thank you, Colin. Any immediate questions or reflections for Colin? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on to Phil, please.
Morning, everyone. Phil Mantay, I'm the CFO and Deputy CEO at DPT. I hope you're all well. There's probably lots of things I could rehearse, and they would all be sort of things that you'd be quite familiar with about how people are feeling. I would probably say quite trepidatious about the winter. I think people have been watching the news and hearing that the NHS has probably had a winter in the summer and the winter's yet to come. So I think people are quite, as I say, nervous about that operationally, and therefore you would expect, wouldn't you, as I'm sure you're seeing a lot of focus and attention in that direction. I think the great challenge for us all is to keep the money and performance linked through this time, because it would be very easy for people just to focus on one leg of the stool, wouldn't it? The crisis of winter. But actually, as we all know, we can't let that drift from the money. We're on plan year to date, but have a challenge in the latter half of the year around an increasing CIP requirement, which is a challenge, and we're going all out, obviously, to make sure that we do everything that we can to achieve that. It's not unlikely that we'll be looking at more non-recurrent actions than we'd like, but we've not given up in any way, shape or form on the recurrency of CIP. The thing that's probably a bit different for us than you guys at the moment is probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago now, you'll have seen in the news this cybersecurity attack that happened on a company called Advanced, and we use their product called Care Notes as our EPR. So we've been in a critical incident around not being able to access our EPR for the last 4 to 5 weeks, which has been interesting to say the least. That has therefore presented a challenge for us about how we continue to report a lot of our key performance indicators, and therefore that link between money and finance is going to be more challenging for us probably for a number of months, because even if we get our EPR back and working in the next 4 weeks, the recovery and restoration of all of the recording and activities that have happened back onto that system are going to take quite some effort. So we've got a bit of a unique circumstance in that, and I'm just thanking the Lord that we didn't buy their financial products, because I know that some organisations did and have lost access to their general ledger basically, and I think colleagues at RDOH had a bit of a challenge with their procurement system as well. So I'll stop rambling on now, but that's a unique challenge for us, which isn't disconnected from the whole agenda of efficiency and delivering our performance targets.
Thanks very much, Phil. Again, any initial comments or reflections from Phil? Nope. So we'll push on to Dave, please.
Here's John. Dave Stacey, Deputy Chief Exec and CFO at Torbay. I think most of you know me. So, like Phil, I'll try and dwell on what's different for Torbay, because there's a huge amount of commonality in terms of the challenges we are facing financially. In terms of the feeling within the organisation, I think it's one of fatigue now. I think, you know, summer's been a lot more difficult than anyone envisaged, and it feels like winter isn't going to be any easier, is it? And there's a bit of unknown around how it's going to pan out with COVID and welcome, Carl, and flu. But that is also overlaid with a sense of opportunity as well. So obviously we're just in the final stages of redoing our strategic outline case for the new hospital programme, and we're hopefully about to get going with a vengeance on the FBC for the digital investment. Now, both of those things, if you think about some of the systemic challenges Torbay has, could be real game changers. You know, we have an estate and digital deficit here that's very real, and you see immediately both of those things when you walk around the organisation. And there's some, you know, green shoots coming through. We've had an endoscopy bid approved for 5 million of capital to build another room, and we're hoping to get 15 million for an additional couple of theatres as well to support elective recovery into the medium term. Financially, we'll of course have a tactical conversation with John about this, but I don't think we'll be reporting on plan for month 5. The plan we set, like many, had a load of risks in it. A lot of those are materialising, particularly around inflation on utilities. But there are probably 3 things about this organisation which are different and are driving through into our financial position. So the first one is Torbay Pharmaceuticals. So you might know, you might not know, we run a drugs factory. It's not an aseptic unit, it's a drugs factory. It's licensed, it operates in 22 countries internationally, turns over 20-25 million a year, but not this year. So sales are 1.5 million down year to date, so very difficult trading conditions for our pharmaceutical manufacturing unit. Second one is about the independent sector. So when we talk about the independent sector here, we're not talking about Ramsay or Spire or the Nuffield. We're talking about social care and continuing healthcare, which are kind of devolved to Torbay to organise as part of the integrated care organisation. When I look at the forecast in that space, there's probably a 7 million cost pressure across the course of the year. Now, most places that'll see itself in local authority books, but not in Torbay. It sees itself in our books, so that's a significant concern. And if you work out a convenient mathematical nicety about what it would need to bring that back into balance, you're talking an 8.5% reduction in price, or a 10% reduction in client numbers, and that's in the face of massive cost pressures in that marketplace and increasing complexity within the population. So that's going to be tough. The third one is around fragile services, really. So we know we've got a number of fragile services. You might know we're sort of relaunching the acute service review across the peninsula, which is a very welcome piece of work. But there's a real urgency around that for us, not just from a financial perspective, but from performance as well. We're tier 1 for 62 days and 78-week waits, and the harms coming through on that are very real, and that has a bearing on the feeling within the organisation. So I will probably pause there and sign off with we're definitely in full financial recovery mode, and our next finance committee and board will be receiving a series of choices and options which will prove the expressed commitment delivering a break-even plan. Thank you, John.
Thanks very much, Dave. Any questions for Dave? Nope. In which case, we'll move swiftly on to Alex for UHP, please.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Alex Keast. I'm the Director of Operational Finance at UHP. Good to see you all. I think Sarah is hoping to join us, actually, but hopefully probably not till 11 o'clock, but hopefully she will still be here later. But I'll give you an update of where we are. I'll give you a quick update on the financial position, but then we're going to just share what it feels a bit like in the trust at the moment and what it feels like in the finance department as well. I think would be helpful. Yeah, so financial position, we've got a break-even plan. We're on plan at month 4. I haven't seen month 5 results yet. I'll see them tomorrow probably. It's been difficult to stay on plan. We are using some non-recurrent benefits to do that and bringing some forward to stay on plan. So we do have a recurrent SIP challenge, as other organisations have described. Our forecast outturn kind of includes risks of around 30 million, but hopefully some mitigations against that. But we're still probably looking around a kind of 20 million kind of risk position, really. Similar to some things Colin mentioned, it's a similar kind of profile of risks. CIP delivery is the main one, probably around kind of 12 million, I think, which is related to some of the ERF productivity, similar to some of Colin's position, not be able to find the COVID savings that we wanted to, and some of the service line targets, still pushing for them to be met, but service lines struggling to find things. So we do have a FIP cap. We've got an inflation problem, others, I'm sure, but that's probably around 5 million. But yeah, it's kind of changing every day, really, as prices increase. we've got an EOF clawback risk, I think, as well, especially with some of the Kerno commissioning side of that we face, and with the specialist side where there's a more significant risk of some of the clawback on EOF. So that kind of summarises our risks that we're contending with, and obviously looking at all the further mitigation plans and how we can improve that, and hopefully we still will improve on that still quite significantly. In terms of how it feels in the trust, it's a similar message probably to others. It is very difficult. It is very challenged. Our ambulance position and ambulance wait position is very difficult. It is one of the worst in the country. I think we do fluctuate between Cornwall and another couple of trusts around. Unfortunately, being at the top of that list, our ED department is constantly full. There are almost ambulances outside pretty much most of the time, which is really, really difficult position. And at the same time, we obviously do have some of the workforce challenges that others have mentioned, and we do have some long waits that are difficult. And I think the organisational context of that is that does take up energy. We're in tier 1 for ambulance waits and for the long waiters, and we have had numerous national visits from various people coming down to look at our position, at what we're doing about it, and I think that does cause a bit of difficulty, for some of the execs in terms of those being pushed to address some of those issues and throw money at the problem, regardless really of what your financial position is. A lot of the national teams that are coming down are very much focused on that performance side and not really focused on the financial issues of the trust, and we can get some conflicting messages that are quite hard then to balance with the financial position that we're trying to drive and trying to achieve. So that does make life difficult, and have some some difficult conversations and things around the kind of agency caps and stuff like that is where some of that kind of plays out as a kind of good example, I think. So it is challenging. We know we have got to extend a larger delayed transfer of care position than we would like. I think we're kind of around 11 or 12%, whereas pre-pandemic we were kind of 4%, and that is still having that's still probably the driver of a lot of the issues that we're facing. Kind of really welcome news that we've got some demand and capacity and ambulance handover funding, which is really welcome. I think we've got quite a bit of funding coming for that. Difficulty is that doesn't kind of help the conflicting messages that we're trying to deal with in terms of financial control and agency control, when we've got additional funding and an ask to try and really spend it and get on with achieving the things it should achieve. So still just kind of some difficult messaging around that, but really good that we've hopefully got that coming to us, which is great. In terms of how it feels in the department, it is very busy. I think the exciting thing is we do have some really good business cases going through at the moment. We've got our phase 1 future hospitals build for our kind of new ED department and interventional radiology theatres. We are hoping to finally submit our OBC to the national team for review and approval in the coming months. And that's really, really exciting, and that building looks amazing, but obviously it's hard work to get everything lined up for that. We've got our EPR business case as well, similar to Dave, trying to get on the pathway to get that approved as soon as possible, and we've got some other elective recovery items that are pretty significant that kind of involve quite a lot of work. So it's kind of really exciting stuff kind of going on, but just make the workload of the department, juggling some of the long-term planning and SIP identification and progression, does make it difficult. So there's a lot going on, certainly, but we're hopefully gonna get most of it done and get some really good outcomes on some of it. I think that was everything for me.
Thank you very much, Alex. So again, any questions, reflections for Alex? Nope. Okay. So obviously, and thanks, folks, for sort of majoring on the bits of difference, but there are equally lots of commonality in what we're facing, and that's not a great surprise, is it? And we'll return to some of those in the Q&A, I think, and kind of a theme of what is going through this morning, I suppose, is given that it is all incredibly difficult, how are we working together, and are we working together in the best way to make sure that finance is in the right place on the agenda? We're linking finance performance, all those things. It's, you know, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we're doing that in the most efficient and most productive way. So I don't want to lose sight of that in what is just an incredibly difficult environment. So let's press on. Sorry, I should say at that point we would normally have a little update from our colleagues at Live Well Southwest as well as part of these sessions going forward. But unless I've missed it, I don't think we have anyone from Live Well available today.
No, we don't. We can press on.
Yeah, okay, well, so we'll push on, but we will normally want to hear from our Live Well colleagues as well. Charlie, are you able to share slides that I sent? Okay. Yeah, thanks. Just so just to sort of finish off the spin around the organisations, but just to give some reflections, I was asked to take you on a journey around the board, not in 80 but in 70 days. So I will do my best passepartout and try and do that. So the CCG is dead. Long live the ICB. So one of the things you'll notice is ICB, ICS, ICP kicking around in the vernacular. All three things exist, and they do sometimes get interchanged, but that's not really the important thing. The important thing is that we understand what it means in terms of what's subtly or radically different from when the CCG was holding the sort of commissioning role within the organisation. Just to finish that off, so ICB is the statutory body. It's the Integrated Care Board. ICS is the wider integrated care system, including all of the organisations that are within it. The ICP, the Integrated Care Partnership, then pulls in a voluntary sector and a much broader set of partners, but it is also a thing. The Integrated Care Partnership exists and it meets periodically as a bit of a sort of reference point. So we need to be just aware that that all of those things are real and exist. Move on, please, Charlotte. So this is just a bit of a reminder, and again, it's not new for us, but at the heart of integrated care for some time has been the notion of system, place, and neighbourhood. So for us, system is now One Devon, the integrated care system. Our local care partnerships, so north, south, east, West, and Plymouth, are the sort of place interpretations that that we've got, and there are some quite interesting dynamics in that, certainly when it comes to finance agenda. So if you see what it says on that slide, where most service change will happen, so there's quite a debate at the moment about that. That's probably right in terms of where a lot of this makes sense, but at the moment we don't devolve. We're nowhere near ready for devolution of much resource to local care partnerships, but there is a huge weight of expectation in terms of doing that. So on our agenda is something about how do we make a reality of that, so that we can align the decision making and resources at LCP level in a way that it just doesn't happen at the moment. And then below that, for neighbourhood, the primary care networks, which have been around for some time now, but actually the next phase does include how we work and bring those PCNs more into the LCP constructs. Also on that slide, just listed down the right-hand side, the aims. What's the point? What's it all about? That's a set of fine words, I suppose, but that is what we're all charged with doing. And the obvious one on there for focus for us is the enhanced productivity and value for money, which, if we think about all of the challenges that we've heard about in the first few sessions, is pretty obvious. Move on, please, Charlie. So I thought it was worthwhile putting this up just in to make a couple of points, really. So this is the board as in the ICB, so the board of the statutory body. So few things to come from this. First of all, there's quite a lot of new players on the pitch, and particularly at non-executive level, we've got with one exception, Judy Hardigan, it's a completely new set of non-execs. So part of what we and I have been doing in the first 70 days is just getting the non-execs up to speed with what is on the agenda and some of the realities of the financial position and the challenges that we're all facing. What you would also notice from the makeup of the board, and again, remake the point, this is the board of the statutory body, that is the ICB, but the ICB has jurisdiction across the whole system. And to reinforce that point, as voting members on the board, we have in the non-executive space, we've got Hisham Khalil, who, as well as being a non-executive, is a practicing clinician, an ENT surgeon at UHP. Also, as a voting member on the board, we've got Liz Davenport, people will know, is chief exec down at Torbay. We've got representation, voting member from Plymouth City Council, chief exec on there. So all parts of the system are represented as voting members on the board. So that does introduce some, if you like, more legitimacy around decision making, but also some interesting sort of tensions, if you like, around the discussions that will happen at board level. So a lot of change at the very top of the shop, and that is playing out in some quite interesting dynamics in there. Sorry, I was also going to mention as a non-exec member, we have Sheena Asthana, who will be known to some people, who is an academic, but also sits on ACRA, the forget what the acronym is, but the people who are responsible for the resource allocation formula for distributing money across the NHS. Sheena has a particular interest in health inequalities and how you use allocations to drive, which is one of our responsibilities about tackling health inequalities. So again, from a finance perspective, interest in dynamics from board level in how that's playing out and how we actually start to make sense and operationalize some of that stuff. Move on, please. So this slide, I won't talk through the bullet points, but I think it just sort of chimes with some of the challenges that we heard about from the people who spoke about it through an organisational perspective. But I think you could say that for the ICB, this is pretty much the epitome of a baptism of fire, isn't it? So picking up some incredibly difficult operational conditions. The national picture and the national news is all about long waiters and ambulance handovers, and as we've already heard, unfortunately we have got those issues somewhat turbocharged, so we feature large in the political and local pressure around all of those things. Financially, we're, as we know, one of only 5 systems that weren't able to deliver a balanced plan for the year. So we're under pressure at every turn, really, and if you sort of put that together with my previous stuff around, quite a lot of new people incoming to get their heads around how you best deal with that. It has been a very challenging start for the ICB. What comes next is more important. So I think when people are up to speed now and have got their heads around the challenges, what are we doing to address them is where we need to move next. Move on, please, Charlie. So just checking in, how has that been reflected in what's been on our finance agenda for the first couple of months of our operations as an ICB, and I think this does fortunately make sense with the things that we've heard about from organisations. So number one really is operational plan delivery. So we've heard about how challenging that's going to be for the ICB as an organisation, as part of the system. There's also a fair bit of risk in the plan. We too would be expecting to make use of some non-recurrent flexibility that we built up over the COVID period, either to support delivery of that plan or to help us with, we sort of euphemistically say transformation, don't we? I don't think a lot of that is transformational at the moment. I think it's about keeping in place some of the things which are supporting services at the moment. So the faster hospital discharge arrangements is an obvious example of that. We've kept those in place for one more year, but they won't be able to be sustained beyond that. There simply won't be the money around for it. So that's quite a challenging thing for us to get into. But operational plan delivery is sort of front and centre for all of us, no different in the ICB. How do we take what was, we know, a very risky plan, but we've got to deliver it? So a massive focus for everyone at the ICB. I've put here navigating the financial and performance regime shift. So it still feels like exiting the COVID regime and getting back to something more like business as usual is a work in progress. So couple of examples of that. ESRF is still incredibly complicated, isn't it? The rules have changed for the first 6 months. They might change for the second 6 months. We're still not really sure about how we sit against the 104 expectation because of the complexities of the calculation. That just creates uncertainty, which leads to a potentially risk-averse position, but it also creates work. So there's quite a lot to do to still pick your way through the finance and performance regimes. We heard from Alex earlier on about the demand and capacity funding. That's another example of that, I think. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there weren't some more tranches of money coming out for certain things, and how do you juxtapose that against the strong message that we need to get out about the need for recurrent savings and delivery. So that's been a tricky one to hold and get people up to speed with on the first 70 days. CIP and productivity is a big push for all of us, getting that back on the agenda. I won't say more about that because we've heard enough from others, but I will say a little bit about the ICS financial recovery plan. So some people will be directly connected into this, some people not, but we are quickly developing and have got some additional resource through the National Recovery Support Programme in to help us with that endeavour. But genuinely, what are the things at system level which will supplement CIP effort that's going on through organisational streams, where there are savings opportunities there, but they can only be delivered if we work on a collaborative basis or have something in place at a system-wide level, which is not there at the moment. So we've got 14 streams of opportunity identified where it sort of fits into that territory. Some of those programs are quite well developed, some of them certainly aren't, and we've got to work very quickly now to turn those from broad ideas with broad opportunity into actual firm plans with delivery milestones and so on, so that we can see what contribution we can get from those in this financial year, but also beyond the constraints of that, because from the size of numbers that we've got, we know we need everything that we can think of and more beyond. We've been doing a lot of work on medium-term financial plans. So yes, we have to deliver this year, but we need to be clear on what the outlook is beyond that. We again say very, very frequently, if you think this year was tough, 23-24 is going to be even worse, but we need to start putting some numbers on that, both in terms of what the outlook is, but also what the size of challenges that we need to put back into the operational arena for what we need in terms of contribution to the financial plan. So bit of work in train, which everybody will be contributing to, I know, with Angela Hibbard taking a lead on behalf of the DOFs in Devon on the medium-term financial planning. That is coming together to inform 23-24 plans, and we would expect that to be going through to the Integrated Care Board fairly shortly. I think it's on a road to get there in November. We've also been in quite a bit of work on what the finance and performance governance structure is going to be for the ICB, but also for the wider integrated care system. So people in the past will have probably heard us talk about STEC, the System Transformation and Efficiency Committee. STEC is no more, but we do need a piece of formal governance on the executive side of the house for the system. So we're establishing an exec finance committee, which will be chaired by me in the first instance and Bill in the fullness of time, just where we can bring together an overview on financial performance across the system. So CIP delivery at organisational level and the contribution from that financial recovery plan that I've been talking about will come together in governance terms at the exec finance committee, and we'll use that very much like a program board for identifying blockages, finding ways through that sort of stuff. So so look out for that one. And then finally, just to take us back to where I started with the CCG is dead, long live the ICB. Certainly within my team, there's also been more than a distraction, but a final set of accounts for the last 3 months of operation for the CCG to be done. And as we sit here today, we are without auditor for that, which is a bit of a worry, but that's a story for another day. That's all I was going to say, thank you, but I'm going to hand to Bill at that point, if that's all right. Bill, just to give some reflections on what you've heard and some of your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yep, I hope. So I'm not actually in Bermuda, John. I'm in the States, so it's just after 6 a.m. in Baltimore, where I am at the moment. I've been to Johns Hopkins yesterday. So thanks very much. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's good to be back, or it will be good to be back. And I just wanted to say a few things about what I've heard and what we need to do as a finance community going forward. So some of this is probably going to sound a bit critical, but then those of you who know me will know what I'm like. We are where we are because we didn't have a financial plan. And when I looked at the financial position last year, when I was doing my due diligence for the role in the ICB, one of the things that struck me is that we had so much unidentified CIP. I think from memory, about £120 million. So now what I think we're doing is scrabbling around trying to find ways of coming up with a sustainable financial recovery plan. And I think in order for us to take that forward, we will need a different way of working and a different approach. So notwithstanding the need for us to have effective governance of financial recovery at a system level, we will also need to really adopt what I would call a program management approach. So one of the things I'll be doing, and we'll be working with you and working across the system to achieve, is to really start to develop a program management approach, a PMO style approach to financial recovery. We need to get into a position, I think, where the rhythm of financial recovery is something that we adopt. So that means having very frequent touch points. That means, as well as the importance of the governance of delivery of financial recovery, that it's something that we are engaged in all the time. I will be having conversations with each of the CFOs. I'll be actually coming out to see you. And I think this is another important approach in terms of how we work together. I appreciate, and I haven't been in the country for some time, the impact of COVID has meant that a lot of meetings have taken place through Teams. I understand that. And my view very much is that from an ICB perspective, all of the individuals in hospitals are back at work, and so we will be too. And I recognise that hybrid working is something that's important and something that can lead to greater productivity. But it's also important that organisations actually function as organisations with human beings in the same building as well. So I think that that's something else I will be looking to achieve, and I would like to be able to meet as many of you as possible in person, notwithstanding obviously the issues that we need to think about in terms of infection rates and so on and so forth. And I say this as somebody that was absolutely convinced they would never get COVID and then did the last time I was in the UK. I think what's important for me is that we really start to believe that we can actually achieve something better. I know from time that I've spent in the NHS in the Southwest that Devon has been characterised variously as a basket case and as an area that hasn't really achieved very much, and it's not good and it's no fun, I know, working in an organisation or in a system that is not seen to be high performing. And I was listening to each of you go through the list of things that we had to tackle, and I was thinking at some point I'm going to hear some good news here, but I didn't hear anything, if I'm honest. And also we then need to think about what the opportunities are going forward. I really do think the opportunity to roll out a single instance of Epic is something that could be a game changer for the system if we get it right. And I say this as somebody that's trying to deliver an EMR before I leave Bermuda, and can see, these things are very often binary. We need to be really clear about how we get that right. And that means also when we think about business cases going forward, that they are just what we say, they are business cases. They are not plans for investment that might lead to higher revenue consequences. They're business cases. And I'll be looking at each of those and scrutinising those when we think about what we actually invest in and where money goes in the system. I recognise that the ICB is not the SHA, and so please don't worry and think that this is going to be a return to the good or the bad old days, depending on your perspective of what the SHA was like. But at the same time, it's not the CCG. And I'm very, very clear. I'll be very clear with all of the people who work for me in the ICB that this is not the CCG. This is a very different organisation. And our focus as an ICB should be on the system first and on the internal machinations of the legacy CCG and the ICB machinery second. We really need to be much more system focused, I think, than we have been. And it's not like we're doing this on our own. It's not like Devon is the only ICB in the English NHS. Other people are doing this. A significant number of those are doing it more successfully than we have done, or we are doing at the moment, and we need to learn from that. And we need to be outward focused and learn from the finance community and the finance network that we have to see what works and what works well. And I've been trying to, and it's difficult sometimes, doing two jobs. I have been trying to get us in the ICB to look at things that we haven't done before. So looking at continuing healthcare with liaison, something that's happened and been successful in other systems. Will it work in Devon? I don't know. But what I'm really clear about is our approach has got to be, if something works elsewhere, then we need to try it in Devon. If something has got a demonstrable track record of effectiveness, then we need to try it. And I think that one of the big things, attitudinally, and I'm not saying this about the finance community, and I think you'll be equally frustrated about this in terms of colleagues, is that our approach has got to be, how can we make things better? How can we actually get to a sustainable financial position, as opposed to what I've heard, and again, don't be castigating colleagues, which is all of the reasons why we can't do things. And I think I heard that a bit today as well, and I understand that the dynamic and the difficulty and the dissonance between the financial agenda, the operational performance agenda, and the clinical safety agenda. What I'm really clear about is if we don't get finance right, nothing else matters. There is no way that the system will be praised for delivering on some of these other objectives, and to be honest, at the moment, it doesn't look like we're anywhere close to delivering on those, but having a financial position that is not balanced or is worse than planned. I heard also that we're starting to go off plan. You would not be surprised if you know me that when I join, we will be going back to plan if there's not a good reason for us to understand that. And I do appreciate and understand that there are significant risks in the system. there are significant risks in each of your organisation's financial positions, and you are doing a very challenging job in trying to balance those. But there's also, I think we need to recognise professional accountability, and I take that very, very seriously. And if we have professionally committed to a financial position, and that financial position is one that we are struggling to deliver, we also need to be clear about professionally where that leaves us as a group of finance professionals and as individual organisations with responsibility to sovereign boards. So they are the things I think that we need to be focused on. I absolutely understand that this is probably one of the most challenging financial systems in the country. I am up for the challenge. I do understand how difficult this is going to be. I am genuinely excited and really looking forward to getting started. I'm really looking forward to meeting some of you that I haven't met before, and to reacquaint myself with those that I haven't seen for some considerable time. And I really do believe that as a finance community, we can and we will improve this position. We will get back on track, and we will make Devon a place that other people look up to and people want to work in. And that's not to say that it's not going to be very difficult. That's not to say that we're going to find this a significant challenge, but I really do think that it's something that we can tackle. I don't really want to mix anything else, John. I don't know if that was too depressing. I'm very happy if anybody wants to respond to anything that anybody might say, or to take any questions. I might be going off piste in terms of the agenda, but I'm happy for anybody to tell me that I'm talking nonsense and that I really don't understand how difficult things are.
Thanks, Bill. I doubt anyone will do that, but and I'm certainly not going to either. But a decent reminder to actually, you've got to focus on the positive here, haven't you? So it is incredibly difficult out here, but our job is to improve and make things better. So so plenty of food for thought in there, which it would be useful to pick up in the Q&A to a greater or lesser extent. I think at that point I'm going to hand over to Dave, who is going to take the chair for the Q&As.
That's right, John. Thank you. And I do need your steer, just looking at timing and agenda, because we're getting a bit compressed. So we've got this session until 11:30, which means we might only have time for a couple of questions. Are there any questions from the floor? We do have some pre-submitted, but I'll do a quick pause for any hands going up. Otherwise, I'll move to our first pre-submitted one. All right. So the first one we had in, I think is quite timely and relevant, around, do you have any advice for how to balance development opportunities with your day-to-day role? So for that one, I might bring Sarah Brampton in as the chair of our Southwest Finance Leadership Executive. Sarah, are you with us?
Yeah,
and do you want to kick us off on that?
I am. Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry I was late joining you, everyone, and welcome, Bill. Nice to see you. Yeah, how do we fit development in with our other competing priorities? Was that the question, Dave? So I think development, so two things. So development doesn't stop. We all are continually, or we all should be continually developing ourselves and our teams and our staff, both clinically and in the finance profession. And I think we have to do that to do our jobs properly. So it shouldn't be either or, and how do we make time for it? It is part of our jobs. If you look at the job plans for consultants, they have programmed activities for CPD. We are professionals. We need to make that part of our job as well. So I'm really keen and clear with my teams that that's what we need to do the best we can. And you know, I would urge you all to take that stance. I don't know, Dave, John, anyone else got any other views on that?
I mean, I can throw in my sort of two penneth before Colin comes in, Sarah. I always look at, you know, my job and other people's jobs around me is to do your job, right? Obviously, you've got functional responsibility, but you've also got a responsibility to make your job better. It's that sort of continuous improvement mindset. And I think, you know, the programs we're developing nationally through the Finance Leadership Council, I think have come on leaps and bounds. I think they've come on so far that actually sometimes they can be a little bit difficult to navigate. So I think as an FD community, we had a long conversation yesterday actually about how to make it easier for people to find their way through this and get onto the right programs and access the right training. But Colin, your hand's up. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, so it's probably more on where those development opportunities exist. So there's traditional CPD, but for me, I think as CFOs and directors of operational finance, there is so much in relation to portfolios going on outside of organizations across the system that I think it's about looking for those opportunities to support work streams across the system, which take people out of the confines of their own organization, and then starts to get people used to system working, system dynamics, and things that are going on within that environment.
Thanks, Colin. And that might be a good segue into the next question, actually, unless Tian, you want to come in briefly.
I was just going to add to say that, you know, the most challenging times actually people develop the most, in some sense, because they're facing the same challenge.
Can't hear you, Tian.
You're a bit quiet.
Can you hear me now? Now? Still no.
Keep going.
Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Oh, that's better. Okay, sorry. So I was just going to add that actually in the most challenging times, actually there's more development opportunity because colleagues actually develop more in challenging times. And I think we all have very similar challenges and we all do things very differently, but it's actually the time that we all learn from each other and, you know, looking at the processes and how can we making the most of this challenging time for developing our colleagues as well.
Definitely. Love the can-do optimism, Tian. Thank you. Ben.
So I was wondering, this is not so much about how you can balance the two things off, but there's a lot of work to do, isn't there, around the transformation program and what John was talking about the 14 work streams about financial recovery, etc. And I wonder to what extent we can free up people to support, to have more focused support on those programs rather than what they're currently doing. And I don't know, again, I'm not quite sure how we do it, but it's about rethinking about what the current roles are, what the current priorities are, and how we're able to focus on the transformation, which eventually will get us back towards balance. And that will give people different things to do, different skill sets, and there's skill sets we need to develop, aren't they, on an ongoing basis. And I wonder if that's the way to do it.
I think that's right, Ben. And I guess my take on that sort of builds on something Bill said, actually. I think, you know, we need to think about what's value adding and not value adding and where we can make the best of the resource we've got. We have to reduce our reliance on management consultancy, and we also have to engage more widely. Bill made a very striking comment about being curious as a system and looking outside for best practice. You know, that Sarah and I, as part of the regional finance leadership executive, get trackers, right, of engagement in the national programs. There's one which is about financial innovations, right? So there's a financial innovation forum which is all about improving basic processes and freeing up time to reinvest in more value adding activities. I don't think within Devon or the wider Southwest our engagement with that is particularly where it needs to be. So I think part of the short term stuff might be about, you know, engaging more insofar as we can with what's on offer there, and getting up to that level. And it's not all the kind of royal free level automation and robots and 24/7 recruitment office that is stuffed by a bot. It doesn't all have to be that. There are incremental gains we can all get behind, I think. So on that, we've probably got time for one more question, and Bill, I might come to you first on this one, if I may. So the question is, how are you finance directors looking to develop skills for teams in different areas? Is there a plan to upskill finance staff due to ICS working? And the reason I'm coming to you first, Bill, is you know, you referenced the ICS and the ICP not being the CCG and not being the SHA and being something different. So I wonder if you want to kick us off with some early thoughts on that, conscious you're not on the ground with us in sunny Devon yet.
Sorry, good. Yeah, I mean, I think that the ICB is the system leader. And, you know, if I think back to, and I'm not trying to kind of say it's the same, but if I think back to NHS Southwest days, I was very clear that that responsibility resided at the regional level. And I would say the same thing. I expect that the ICB will take a lead on those things. And I think that the way that we will work across all of the spheres of the activity that we're engaged in will be that we lead and that we coordinate and that we facilitate. You know, and I recognise that the lines of accountability are a bit blurred, and I see it as an opportunity. You know, I'm very much of the view that if things are slightly vague, then you know that means that there is a lot of opportunity for an ICB to work collaboratively rather than being scared about what the legislation says or what the legislation doesn't say. So I will be very clear that we will be working as a finance community in Devon. And I see myself very clearly, I will do, as the leader of that finance community. Now, somebody might tell me that's not correct, but until they do, that's where I see my position. And that's the way that I would expect us to work collaboratively as a finance community that will tackle the issues that we see ahead of us and work together to resolve those, respecting the fact that sovereign organisations obviously have other dual accountabilities that they need to be cognizant of.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bill. We'll do one more before we hand over to Suzanne for her presentation. And I might come to Phil on this one, if that's okay. Are there plans for staff back office sharing and how would this work?
Okay, thanks. And thanks for whoever asked that question as well. So let's be clear, we already do some of this. So I could list off a number of services that we get from our colleagues at RDUH in DPT. So it's not that we don't do this at all. But I do think there needs to be a very clear expectation that it's something that we explore and exhaust all possibilities on. So it's not like we haven't been here before. We've talked before about what functions across corporate services we could share. We've done lots of analytical work and it hasn't quite got over the line. So I think people should expect that this is an area that we are going to be actively pushing quite hard. But we would also want to hear from people, from you, what doesn't work at the moment, what could work better, so that it doesn't just feel like it's a top-down imposed thing. So whilst I'm not describing to you that next week something is going to change in terms of a shared service, I really do think it's a space that not only will others expect that we have exhausted, but we should ourselves expect that. So Colin, do you want to come and add anything to that?
I'd agree with what you said, Phil. And I think if we go back to the example that Bill gave earlier about one incident, or two elements here, one about system first and then incidences of the same system, then we have a single ESR. Why would we not be looking at a single finance ledger, etc., and the transactional elements that go with that? So to shield ourselves from the opportunities of productivity and modernization and the same challenges that we put on our operational colleagues, we should expect to have leveled back at ourselves and shine a light on those opportunities.
Spot on, Colin. We talk a lot about clinical services, don't we, and standardization and unwarranted variation and GIRFT and consolidation and centralization. It can't be any different for us, can it? Otherwise it kind of undermines our one of our core challenges into operational and clinical teams.
Just on that, I mean, just for some of my ICB colleagues, you know, I do think that it's important that the ICB is as efficient as the organisations that it is involved with in terms of system leadership. So we will be looking at portfolios, structures, efficiency, management costs, running costs, all of those things. My view very much is that if we're going to hold the system to account, then we need to be in a position where we've already scrutinised our own position, and that's something that I'll be doing when I get started.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I think on that, John, I'll hand the chair back to you, and I think we're introducing Suzanne, who's got a presentation for us from one of her recent development programs, if I'm right. So John, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. And yes, spot on. Thank you. I will just hand on to Suzanne and let you do your own introduction, Suzanne. Thank you for stepping up to do this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Suzanne Pollard, so I work for the ICB, but I have more of a system role. I was lucky enough to be on a leadership course recently, and there was a presentation that was delivered by Professor Veronica Hope, very inspiring lady, but it was on trust. And I thought it was really interesting, and I'd just like to share it with you all today. I can just. What can you see?
Yeah, can see that, Suzanne.
Does it say part 1, fundamentals of trust?
It does indeed. Yeah.
Okay. So trust is really important. It leads to faster decision making, more information sharing, problem solving, greater commitment to change, higher levels of engagement, and greater innovation. So it's very straightforward comment at the bottom. Everything is easier with trust, and its absence makes everything harder. So therefore, as a system, we really need to focus on trust and make sure that we have it. So trust is a willingness to take a risk and feel vulnerable, but step forward because with confidence, you believe your leader has your well-being as one of their primary responsibilities. So another definition of trust is the intention to accept vulnerability based upon positive expectations of the intentions or behaviours of others. So basically what comes up here a lot is vulnerability. So if there is no vulnerability, then there's no reason for us to trust. So that made me think, well, in what ways are we vulnerable? Like more now than we were before, as individuals, as organisations, and now as a system. And therefore, why is trust becoming more and more important? I'm not going to answer that for you, but it's just something to think about. There are different types of trust and trust dynamics that are being played out, but I'm not going to go into that for now. But trust is a mutual relationship between a truster and a trustee. This is a key point really about there are 4 main parts that make up trust. So the first is ability, and this can be the most important one potentially, but not in all situations. But for instance, if you're having an operation done, it's very important you have the ability of your surgeon. So is someone able to do the job that you are trusting them to do? The next part there is benevolence. So does my leader or does the person have my best interests at heart? Are they thinking of the good of others and not for themselves? And then also, do they have integrity? Are they honest? Do they have strong moral principles? And then finally, it's predictability. So we need to see those first 3 behaviours happening again and again and again. So we've got the predictabilities that allows us to trust people. And I was just thinking about those 4 things, that they are different in different situations. My daughter, for instance, I assume she should trust me in all circumstances because I do have her best interests at heart, but she's judging me on my ability and the predictability. So if it's a situation she's never come across before and she doesn't know that I'm able to do it, she may not trust me. And it takes me by surprise sometimes. So it's something that isn't guaranteed from one situation to another. And we do have to put a lot of effort into building up trust as as we go along. So there are different things that lead to an individual's propensity to trust. So some people trust more easily than others, and every individual is different, and it comes from different parts in their past or etc. But I just want to draw your attention to the last point on there, which is a culture of distrust usually leads to control systems being a substitute for trusting relationships. Now, we have seen that in the past, and now we're in SOF 4. There are more, control systems in place, and it's not really a place we want to be in because it just sucks time and energy out of everyone's daily lives to fulfill those control systems. Whereas if we could revert back to a culture of trust, it does make everything easier. So this is something that really struck everyone in the room, that trust comes on foot and leaves on horseback. So it takes a long time to build it up, but one wrong move and it's gone. So then we went on to how do you repair trust at an organisational level if it's if one of those 4 things goes wrong. So the first thing you need to do is apologise and take responsibility and express regret for the others that have been let down, and to order an immediate and independent investigation and exit all those involved or tainted at senior level by the scandal, and visibly work to demonstrate your trustworthiness as an organisation. And then you have to go on to publish the results and then decide what you're actually going to do about it and actually make that change. So sometimes if there has been a lack of competence or ability, then an apology might be all that's needed, because we are allowed to fail occasionally, once or twice maybe, and an apology might be all that's needed. But if that trust is breached because of a lack of integrity or character, then it's much more difficult to repair, and an apology is unlikely to be effective on its own. So there needs to be something more substantial change, or some sanctions, or some behaviours that are going to change. And then if this does keep happening, then it's Humpty Dumpty time. And I know I've been in the NHS for a while, and I have seen that people have had to go. They've had to go because they can't be trusted anymore. And if you don't have trust, then you can't run organisations, you can't run departments, etc. Now this slide is about apologies, but I think it's something that we can use in our personal lives, or if we've had a problem with a colleague, and to how to make an apology effective. And if you want to read through what these say, and notice that it's got I in all of them, so you have to really focus on saying that I did something and I am sorry and I will change, and for an apology to be really effective. So if you have made a mistake and you do need to apologise, and they can be really effective, but it's I am sorry, I made a mistake, I was wrong, I've learned my lesson, and I will now do this. And please forgive me for the harm that I have caused. But it's something you can repair trust by taking some responsibility. So we have more and more partnership working. And as we go into especially some of those cross-organisational transformational schemes that have been talked about, this is what we need to do. So in terms of ability, we need to deploy our best experts to generate the shared vision. So we can't be putting people who aren't able to make those changes into those groups. We need to show benevolence, so give our time to listen, to understand. We need to show integrity, and be honest about the difficult choices and the trade-offs between partners, because none of this is going to be straightforward, but we just need to be honest about where it's difficult and where we've made decisions. And then predictability, so frequency of contact and proximity. So the willingness to trust, it's the choice that someone makes. So, and it's according to how they think you are trustworthy, not how you think of yourselves as being trustworthy. So you need to demonstrate those 4 things, and for them to be open for someone else to observe, in order for someone to trust you. It's and that's the last slide I have. So I hope that was interesting for everyone. I am going to invite questions, but I may have to defer to some of our leaders here if I can't answer them. Does anyone have any questions at all? No? Okay, in that case, I'll hand back to John to introduce the next person we've got.
Okay, thank you very much, Suzanne. So again, plenty of food for thought in there. We won't dissect it, but it is worthwhile just noting that as part of organisational development, there was a fairly broad survey done across the system from stakeholders from top to bottom, managers, clinicians, all professions, and the number one thing that came out of that in the answer to the question about why can't we get things done in Devon was because we don't trust each other. So you know, if ever there was an illustration about it is practically getting in the way, then that's there. So all of the learning from there is something that we have to take on board, because it helps you to get things done. That's the purpose, isn't it? But so thank you very much again for stepping up to do that. Right, we are going to pass over then. I think we're just about on time. So I'm going to pass over to Megan, who's going to talk about inclusion and diversity.
Thanks, John. I'll just share my screen quickly, 2 seconds. Can you all see that? Right, so I've been asked to come and speak to you guys about the Inclusion and Diversity Ambassadors Network, which we run within the National Finance Academy. So, oh, it's not working. How do I go next? So in this network, we work together to share best practice and ideas around initiatives to support the EDI agenda. So what we want to do is understand what programs and initiatives are working well within organisations and are making a difference, and then to identify the more challenging areas, and then what can we do to support that. So we have regional networks set up and they meet on a quarterly basis. We have recently set up the Southwest one, which is great. We've met once so far. Our next meeting is on the 13th of October, and we currently have 13 ambassadors from the region, 3 from Devon ICS. We do not have members from Devon Partnership NHS Trust or Torbay and South Devon. It'd be really great if we could have all organisations represented on this network. It just allows you guys to work together on the actions that will be set as an ICS. You can have more than one ambassador per organisation to sort of help share the load and support each other, and therefore you can rotate attendance at these meetings and then work together behind the scenes. So that's a little bit about the network itself. Some benefits for joining are you can increase your profile, meet some like-minded individuals. The main one for me is making a real and positive change within the NHS finance. You also get access to senior leaders from both across your region and within your organisation, and there's opportunities to get involved with lots of national meetings and events. So if you were to get involved, there is a commitment to the network. We are working alongside the national objectives that have been set, and they're highlighted in the National EDI Action Plan. I'll pop a link in the chat after this session so you can have a look through that if you haven't already seen it. And then what we like to do is tailor those objectives to the region that we're working within, so to suit your local needs. And through the initial meeting, we'd come up with 4 key objectives to work towards. And if you do sign up, you're expected to attend these regional meetings. But as mentioned, you can have multiple people from each organisation. And we ask that the ambassadors take away 1 action from each meeting to try and implement this within your organisation. And then you update on this about either your successes or any issues that you've come across. And then we work together as a group to overcome any issues or to share best practice. One of the other roles of an ambassador is just to keep your organisation updated on any O&F opportunities. So things like career development programmes and events. We have a diversity newsletter, which we ask ambassadors to sign up to. So you just get a constant stream of information about what we are offering. And then finally, the region will be asked at occasions to take part in presentations. If you guys attended the HMA Summer Conference, you may have seen a session where Nick Cashew, the chair of the Northwest Regional Network, he spoke about the work that they've been doing to just sort of share more information about what we do within these network meetings. So if you would like to sign up, or if you're interested but want to come along to the next meeting and see what it's all about, then just contact us on finance.academy@nhs.net and come along to the next meeting, which is taking place on the 13th of October. So that's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there any questions or follow-ups for Megan? Nope. Okay. Thanks. Thanks again, Megan. So I think that takes us through to just a few minutes for some closing thoughts, which is largely around sort of format of the sessions and what do we want to do going forward. So it might be a bit difficult to do in this forum, but perhaps just any reflections that you've got, you can always put those back through Charlie at HFMA. But anybody got any comments about broad things like the timing? Has this been too long, too short, that sort of thing? Let's just have a few minutes on that, Sarah.
Yeah, so I think it's brilliant to get us all together. I think there's so much we've got to do over the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. So I think the more time we can get our heads together, the better, is my personal thought. But I do wonder, just taking Bill's point about face-to-face meetings, now we're all back at work, wonder whether we would be up for getting together in a room, because I think we could probably do a bit more business and be a bit more open with each other if we can see it, because I can only see, 9 of you on the screen. It would be good to just get each other in the room. There's a lot of work we can do. I think if we just get around the table and start doing some sharing of ideas. So I would be up for that if people are. I know it's a day out your diary, but if we could find a room somewhere central and just commit to a bit of time together, I think it would be time well spent.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And the 9 people that I can see were all nodding. So I think there's broad support from that. I mean, we won't do this by committee, but I think the next scheduled one of these would be in December, but that's going to clash with Christmas, so that's probably pushing it into January. Maybe that's too far away. It probably feels like it is too far away for me. So we'll land on a date to do that.
November.
In November.
Yeah.
Look forward to November.
Yeah.
And I agree with Phil. It should be face to face, and we go for someplace central. I mean, one thing I was going to ask, and I don't be critical. What is the purpose of these meetings? The overarching purpose.
Yeah, so this is only the second one, Bill. We wanted to get teams together. So it initially was about, the fact that we've all been working from home or working on Teams, and we haven't seen each other in person for years, couple of years, other than those of us that are getting out to conferences or whatever. So it was about getting our senior teams together to share some ideas, share a bit about best practice, and look at how we can work together going forward. So it's only the second one. We're really up for thinking about what we can do with this group, because I think there's a lot of people that don't know each other that might have joined over the last couple of years. So yeah, so it's about establishing a network of senior finance people.
Okay, so that was my next thing. So when we say senior finance people, what level are we going down to?
It isn't prescriptive, but we've sort of invited our senior teams. So for me, I've got my next layer down here.
Right. So what's that? Deputy Director of Operational Finance, that sort of level, yeah.
Yeah, and below that, yeah.
Right. Okay. So it would be what? Monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly?
Yeah, I think the last one was 2 months ago, but that's possibly because of summer holidays. So yeah, but again, up for people's ideas about how frequently. I think we've settled on every other month at the moment, but.
And it's facilitated by HFMA?
Yep, so Charlie's helping pull it together, and us DOFs, CFOs, have been organising the agenda.
I mean, so sorry, just kind of come in and say what I think it should be like, but I'd say every other month, next one in November, face to face, somewhere central in Devon.
Sounds good.
Makes sense. Yeah. And the agenda, it was intended to be a little bit of business, a little bit of development, wasn't it? But the more it can get into the development space and, you know, bring in some of that learning from elsewhere and that sort of thing, if that's what will bring it to life, I think. But yes, I'll leave that with you. So we'll get onto the logistics of that and sort the next one out. I'm not going to particularly dwell on this unless anybody wants to stick a hand up and offer anything, but in terms of future topics and things that you would want to hear, again, fire those into to Charlie at HFMA. And if anybody is interested in presenting a topic which is in and of itself developmental, then feel free to volunteer. The more the merrier, really, on that front. Right, okay, so unless there are any last reflections from anybody, we'll wrap it up there.
Cheers, John.